When I was in the 8th grade, I took to the dentist, which I thought would just be a regular filling. Little did I know that this would be the day that I was actually almost ended up dying. Started off in the morning. I went over to Highland Dental over in St. Paul to get my filling done. They started trying to do the work, and they gave me Novocaine, but it wasn't working, so they gave me shot after shot of it. And it actually ended up being 13 shots in total. Once I was done with all the work, I got in the car with my mom, started going home, and the Novocaine started wearing off, and I got a really bad pain in my chest, and my throat started aching really bad, and I couldn't breathe, and I kind of started freaking out a little bit. My mom actually told me that I sounded like Kermit the Frog. My mom didn't think that anything was wrong with me, and we got home, and I was freaking out that I couldn't breathe. So she called the dentist, she called the doctor, and was trying to figure out what was going on, and they thought I was just having some sort of little reaction. It got later on into the night, and I still could not breathe, and I was gasping for air, and I felt like I was suffocating. I just didn't really know what was going on. And I kept telling my mom, I need to go to the hospital, I need to go to the hospital, and I ended up sounding like Stevie from Malcolm in the Middle. It got to be about 11 o'clock at night, and I was wheezing and gasping for air and completely freaking out, so my mom was finally just like, whatever, we'll go, I'll take you to the hospital. My mom's about this 5'4" little lady. She was freaking out and yelling at me. She yells like a trucker. She's very loud and kind of scary. So, got to the hospital. We went over to St. John's in Maplewood. When I got there, got all checked in, sat down in the lobby, and there was a couple weird people that started coming in through the lobby as I was waiting there. Was this guy that looked kind of sketchy. He looked like he had just came right off the street. And he walked in limping and holding his arm and just started screaming. And was like, I got shot, I got shot. Was freaking out. So they took him and they brought him into the other room and started taking care of him right away. Now the second guy that came in was this big burly biker looking guy, and he looked like he just came in right off his Harley. And he walked in like holding his crotch and was freaking out, and there's blood all over him. And he looked at the nurse and he held up his hand, and his thumb was just dangling there and was just sitting there, and it looked like it was about to snap right off his hand. So they took him into the back room to start taking care of him. Now, the third guy that came in walked in, cupping his hand over his eye, and he had this spiffy business suit on, and he looked a little intoxicated, and was just kind of stumbling around and slurring his speech. But he walked up to the nurse with his hand over his eye and looked at her, and then put his hand down, and his eyeball was laying in his hand. It was still connected to his eye, but it was in his hand, like completely. So they freaked out and took him into the other room. As I was sitting there, my nurse finally came out to come get me to bring me into the other room. And I looked at her, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. She looked straight up like Malibu Barbie. She had bleach blonde hair, fake tan, looked like an orange, and she just had a ton of makeup on. So she brought me into the other room. They did a little bit of analysis, and they figured out that I was having an allergic reaction. And I was actually, at this point, was in anaphylactic shock. So they went to give me epinephrine, so I had to get an IV. The nurse started by trying to get in my wrist, but she couldn't find the vein in my wrist. So she had to move up to my elbow and put it in my vein in my elbow. When she went to put it in, she finally got it in the vein, but she didn't put the stopper on the end of the tube. So once it got in, blood started squirting everywhere. And it was all over me, all over the floor, and it was like squirting me in the face. And instead of my nurse stopping the tube and stopping the blood, she completely panicked and went running out of the room. So we had to flag down another doctor to come in and help me out. And he got the tube closed, got the blood stopping, and got the epinephrine in me. And I was fine in like 20 minutes, good to go, jumping around. So my doctor did a little bit of analysis on my throat to see what the inflammation had caused. And he actually told me that if I would have came 2 hours later, that I actually would have completely suffocated because my throat would have closed and I would have died. So I got back in the car. It was like 3 in the morning, started going home with my mom. And even though I almost died, still to this day, my mom will not take me to the hospital even if I'm dying.